Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our bi-weekly blob, as my friend likes to say. Today we're talking about customers or staff who comes first. I am Dr. Latanya Hughes, the authority in global business dynamics, and my colleagues are Dr. Philip Foster and Dr. Karen Bolzer. You guys are probably familiar with us by now, so I'm going to let Dr. Foster introduce himself before we get started. Go ahead, Dr. Foster.
Well, good morning. It's good to be here with everyone. I'm sorry that Dr. Clark couldn't make it today. I am Dr. Foster, and I am a global thought leader in leadership and strategy and the future. I guess you can call me a futurist. I am the lead consultant for Maximum Change Consulting.
All right, and I am Dr. Karen Bolzer, and I own the Bolzer Group LLC, and my specialty is executive coaching and consulting. Happy to be here this morning.
Yeah, awesome. I am again Dr. Latanya Hughes. I specialize in mentoring and coaching people to effectively influence society to flourish, prosper, and uphold moral character. My colleague, Dr. Clark, was unable to be with us today. He had a conflicting meeting that he could not change, so we're going to miss him. We won't have our normal banter that we normally do when we have all of us together, but we're going to make it work. Today, we have an awesome topic about customers or staff who comes first. And I think a lot of times, particularly entrepreneurs, struggle with knowing which has the better preference, but there really isn't a hierarchy, at least I don't see. So let's dive into the topic for today. And my first question to everyone is, what is the organizational purpose of staff? How does an effective leader actually view their staff? And that can kind of go any number of ways. So I'll let you two kind of take a stab at it early on.
Okay, I think Dr. Bolzer's hoping I'll jump in there. So
I'm gonna take a back seat today. I don't know if I like that.
I was going to drink my coffee as you waxed eloquent there. So my thought on this is that the purpose of staff, the purpose of human capital, if you want to call it that, the purpose of employees, in my mind, is to leverage time and resources. In other words, it's to duplicate effort. We hire people because I do not have the capacity to do something, so I need help. So I add another person, and so on and so on. So it's duplicating effort to leverage time and resources. An effective leader would view staff as a valuable commodity, a valuable resource for the organization, and would treat it as an investment, not as an expense.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
I view staff kind of as a partnership.
Good.
Whether you're a leader or a manager, I believe it's a partnership. Of course, one person has the majority of the authority in a partnership. But I feel like staff is a partnership where you're in this together to reach a common goal or an end. And so if we start looking at staff as a partnership instead of a hierarchy model, I feel like we could get more done in an organization.
That's good. So when we look at staff and organizations, particularly leadership, is there a particular organizational structure that you would recommend or that is recommended that better leverages staff skills if we're to look at them as, as a means to leverage what we can do, or as Dr. Foster was saying, as a means of duplicating efforts to help push things along due to, lack of time and availability? Is there a particular structure, organizational structure that better allows us to leverage our staff?
Go ahead, Dr. Bolzer.
Well, I don't know if there's a particular organizational structure. I think that you have to have know the culture of where you work and the goal that you're trying to get done, because not every structure is going to work for every organization. So just for instance, at my organization, of course, I'm the top, I guess, the leader. And then I have other leaders and supervisors that have their own staff. And so I believe that empowerment, the structure of empowerment, goes a long ways. I tell my staff, even though I have the final authority, I want them to be able to also have the kind of final authority within their departments. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so I'm just a head figure if they need help or need some type of direction to guide them. So I guess my organization, we run kind of just like a partnership, like I said. And if they need me to be that final authority figure, then I'm there. But as a leader in the kind of culture that I have at my organization, I'd rather not be the end all, say all in every decision. I don't feel like that's effective. And since it is a partnership, there's some areas in their departments that I'm not that skilled at. And so I want to feel comfortable with that type of hierarchy as well. Make sense, kind of?
Yes, that's good.
I think Dr. Bolzer really brings up a good point. It's the recognition that the leader does not know everything. It's the recognition that the leader does not always have the answers. And unfortunately, the 20th century model of leadership, in my mind, creates this mythology that the leader knows it all, the leader is the end all, the leader is God, if you want to even go there. And so I think that the 21st century leader really is moving toward this idea that we don't know it all, and we are a collective knowledge base that comes together. And in fact, I stand on a soapbox that says anyone that looks at a 21st century organization and looks for a one-size-fits-all model is in trouble. As Dr. Bolzer was saying, we have to look at culture. We have to look at the product or service. There's so many different nuances to an organization today that we have to understand more to it than I'm the boss, you're not, so get in line and do what I say. That is no longer an effective model. It may have worked in the 80s, but then if you look at what happened in the 1980s and 1990s, we had a lot of ethics failures, the Enrons and the likes of the world. And so, we have to realize that the old school model of leadership was broken and was prone to a lot of ethics violations and ethics failures that we see, that we read about today in the more contemporary leadership books.
I actually agree with both of you. I think that the old school hierarchy mindset really does not help. I think it tends to stifle innovation and creativity. Now, do I feel that there is a place for it? Absolutely. Particularly
Sure.
because sometimes too much autonomy and too much leeway leads to tomfoolery. So you need some type of structure, to maintain control and order so that you don't have a whole lot of chaos. But I believe that, we're seeing different dynamics when it comes to organizational structures. We can see the Googles of the world and the Amazons where they don't have, particularly at Google, where it's definitely a free for all when it comes to creativity and really creating an atmosphere and an environment where people can be more relaxed at work. I know people kind of scoffed at, Google's environment, when they first heard about it and it first started releasing. But then when you start looking at the statistics of how effective it is and how much more productive the people are, they work shorter hours or they play more, more during the day, and it's this and it's that. But look at how innovative they are. Look at the level of creativity. Look at the production levels. I think it matters. Now, mind you, I don't think that what Google does is going to work, at a Microsoft, or it's not going to work the same at a Wells Fargo. You do have to look at your industry and your type of business. But I believe kind of tweaking it along the way to find what's going to be best for you actually does work. So as we start talking really about organizations, and particularly for entrepreneurs and people who are starting a business or who've been in business for a little bit, and just kind of need a refresher or something. Let's tackle this issue of customers. And I like to look at staff as customers. I came up with under the regime of your staff, your employees are your internal customer, and if you don't take care of them, you can pretty much forget them taking care of your external customers. So this is a pretty interesting question. And so the question is, which group of people enters the life of a business owner first? Is it the staff or the customer? And what circumstance dictates who comes first?
Well, we have the benefit of reading these questions before we actually do these blabs. So I've been chewing on this for the last couple of days. And this illustration comes to mind. There was some time ago, I was in a grocery store, and it was around a holiday season. And you know how frustrating going into a retail store of any kind is around the holidays, especially end of the year holidays. And so I was in there, and I was standing in line, and it just so happened I was standing in a longer line for some reason. The other lines were moving pretty fast, but I started realizing that the lines were shorter, and the line I was in was longer, but the person checking out was moving as quickly as the others. And so I kind of turned to the person near me, and you know how you have conversations in line with people just to pass the time. And I said, I wonder why this line is so long. What's the deal here? All the others are moving. I'm thinking about moving. And the person said to me, no, don't move. Stay here. I was like, okay, why? She said, well, this person, the reason why their line is so long is because they're friendly and they engage you in conversation and they make you feel welcome. All those other fools down there are mean or just doing their job through drudgery. I was like, oh, interesting. So when I got up to the line, the person was happy and upbeat and beep, 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 moving through and everything. And I said, man, you were really good at this. Oh, I am so happy to be here. You know, I am so blessed to be alive. And I just love my job and and I looked around and I was like, man, this is a person who gets it. So I dug into it, and this person had been there a while. So they had enough history to be jaundiced to the politics of the organization, if you will. And what I found out was that this person felt valued by the management, and they loved their job. And so it was this cycle that just fed off of each other. And the more people came through, that fed their excitement. And so it just made me realize that the way we treat our employees is only part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the mindset of the employee. Some of those employees in that particular establishment, I frequent there often, they just look like they hate themselves and their jobs. And so I think part of it's a mindset you go into. Every organization I've ever been in, whether it be a hardware store or a grocery store or, you know, X-Mart, whatever, the person that you deal with clearly has a mindset of happiness and excitement long before there is this interaction with the management. Now that just feeds into the management wanting to extol more virtue on them. So anyhow, that's my observation for that.
That's good. That's awesome. Dr. Gozer?
So customers or staff, who comes first? I'm going to go out on a limb here.
I'm not pushing you.
I believe that your staff comes first, because if you don't have a healthy staff, then that's going to affect how they treat the customers. Mm-hmm. And so at my organization, we went through a big rift, a big change, new management, new leadership. And the staff just wasn't happy. They were great at their jobs. They could do paperwork and processes all day long, but their attitudes sucked. The morale sucked. They weren't getting along with each other. And so the first thing that I did was just bought pizza for everyone one day, or have ice cream socials every Friday we have. And then I had a staff member come up to me and said, why are you buying all this stuff for the team? I mean, they didn't do anything really special. They're not going to like you more. And I looked at that person and I said, well, that's the problem. The problem is that you don't value your team members, and old management didn't value their staff. And I said, it begins with the simple things. And so when I brought pizza for everyone, moods started to change. Oh, thanks, Dr. Boser. We appreciate that. Or when I say, hey, John, you can go home early on Friday, an hour. Get out of here. Really? I can get out of here? Yeah, you can get out of here. It's Friday. Spend time with your family. And it's the simple things like that that started to change their attitude and morale. And then their processes and the morale improved drastically. drastically. And so I believe that you have to treat your staff right in order for them to produce fruit, good fruit, not bad fruit, fruit for the customers. So, I mean, customer service at this organization has improved probably 300%, all because I implemented pizza and ice cream socials. I'm not kidding. And so I'm not saying that's an easy solution that's going to work for every organization, but this organization it worked for. And so I'm a true believer in you have to treat your people right, to bring up morale, because if you don't, that's going to start trickling into their customer service and even their work processes,
Right.
because they're not going to give their 100% because they don't feel valued.
Right. I think that makes a huge difference. I remember back when I first started as a very young manager, right out of college. People thought, oh, she's a little gung ho just because she's young. She's new. She's gonna learn real quick that people aren't what she thinks they are, and blah 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 blah. I think one of the things that I learned the most, sometimes you learn what not to do real fast. And one of the things I learned was some of those people have been in their positions for so long, they had become complacent and they took their people for granted. They didn't see the connection between how you treat them and actually caring about them, with their productivity. And like you said, you've got to show people that you value them, that you care. For me, I came in, um, my perspective was coming in to get to know them. I want to know who you are aside from what you do. I already know what you do at work. I know the job description says. I know what you're supposed to be doing. I know that if you didn't have the skills and ability to do this job, you wouldn't be in this job. So my role is not to come in here and change you or to get rid of you and to, bring new people in. My role is I want to know about you. What are your career goals? What do you eventually want to do with it? Is this what you want to do forever? And by taking an interest in them, and their life and their goals, and what's going on with your family, I've noticed this and this, and just paying attention to their behaviors makes a difference. It's not, sometimes we think, oh, you shouldn't cross the line, you're doing too much. No, sometimes showing them that you have a listening ear, to be compassionate about what's going on in their lives makes a huge difference, because now they're going to do extra. And my boss would always come to me to.
Where'd she
I
go?
think we lost her.
That was weird. Oh goodness. Well, come on back in.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. The seat's locked. There we go.
Okay.
I swear I don't, but anyway.
Sorry.
I don't know.
Celeste, I'm going to give you props.
But what I did was, I actually, I ended up being the go-to person to ask people to do stuff. And it was just kind of like, I think he understood the relationship that I had with people, because he would ask them and they would do it because of his title, but they would do it grudgingly and it wouldn't be to the best. But if I asked them, it would be, they would go above and beyond, and it would be, okay, what else you want to do? And or they'll say, hey, I went ahead and did XYZ, da 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 da. And so it made a huge difference in the relationship between myself and the staff, because I cared enough to find out about them and what their goals and what they want to do with their lives. So
Mhm.
I think it really does matter what happens, between leadership and the employees and their output. So I agree that the staff should come first, because that's the first encounter. That's your internal customer. They are your first encounter sometimes. Now, if you're a one man show building your business, you are both. You're the internal customer interacting with the external customer. And so it may happen at the same time. It's a dynamic where it's a simultaneous occurrence, to where you as the internal customer are engaging with the external customer to build more customers. So I think it really depends on the size of the business, where the business is, in their growth, as well as, just the industry overall, because it does matter. You know, in the hospitality industry, you definitely, when it's service, particularly in those that are service oriented, you want to really do focus on your internal customers. So, um, the next question, I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's really kind of dig into it a little bit
Well,
more, and that is
can
which
can
group of the
can I
people. Go
can
ahead,
I can I
Philip. Go ahead.
can I pose something real quick before we move on? You know, this is kind of almost one of those discussions of the chicken or the egg in my mind,
Right.
because I think that the relationships are symbiotic. I think from a leadership standpoint, our focus has got to be on the internal customer because we're leading. But I think that our message is that the that the customer is important. I do not believe and I do not subscribe to the fact that the customer is always right.
Mhm.
Although the perception we need to give is that the customer is right. I can't tell you how many times I have been on a call, a customer service call, where I'm asking for help, and the first thing out of the rep's mouth is, "I can't help you. It's not our policy. You know, let me speak to a supervisor. There is no supervisor available." So you get in this, this cycle of hell, if you want, customer service hell. And so I think that we have to recognize that our role as leaders is to edify and lift up and build trust in our followers, so that the symbiotic process happens where they're wanting to turn around and extol that somewhere else, and it not just be toward the leadership or their colleagues, but to the persons that they're serving. And hopefully that creates an environment where they're excited to serve those people. So anyhow, I just wanted to kind of cap that with those thoughts.
That's good. That's good. So then the next question is, as we really dig deeper, which group, staff or customers, should drive business decisions? And I think that is a conundrum based off of what we've all shared. I think it really depends on how we view our staff. Are we viewing them as just worker bees, foot soldiers, or are we seeing them as our internal customers who will go out and really market for us with that word of mouth? Oh, you know what, my employer treats me real good, and you know, da 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 da. Then that makes other people interested in wanting to know, well, who is your employer? What do they do? And then they get involved and want to be interested in what you're offering. But which of the two should drive business decisions? And I think it really boils down for me what business decisions we're talking about, because that's pretty broad. But what are your thoughts, Dr. Bozer, on that question?
Well, I believe that the staff is driving the business and the customers are the marketers. And so I believe that when you have a great staff, they're customer service oriented, they're mindful. And to piggyback off of what Dr. Foster said, the customer doesn't always have to be right, but they do need to be heard.
Right.
I have met customers who didn't get necessarily what they wanted, but they felt heard and they were pleased. And so I believe that the staff is the driver of the business. And then the customer is also the marketer, because they're going to go out by word of mouth. Well, guess what? I went to this organization. They gave me the best customer service. I didn't get necessarily what I want, but they were friendly, kind, and helpful, and they didn't give me the runaround. And they also could be the drivers of the business. So they could play two roles. They could be the drivers, secondary drivers, and they also can be your primary marketers, which are very beneficial to organizations these days and cost little of nothing. Customer service costs little of nothing, and a happy staff can bring your organization and business a long ways and help the growth of it. And that's two areas I feel like in the 21st century that we have failed as business owners and leaders, because we don't develop our staff not knowing that they're free marketing agents for us. So that's just my feedback in regards to who drives the business. I believe the internal staff drives the business first. So,
Dr. Foster?
So I think that this catapults me back to the statement I made earlier. I think it's a symbiotic relationship that we see going on there. I kind of stand on the fence and lean both ways when it comes to this. I remember in the 90s, early 2000s, Kim Blanchard and Sheldon Bowles wrote a book called Raving Fans. And I don't know if you've read it, but if you haven't, you should. It's a quick read. and the concept behind it was that we as employees, we as organizational assets need to do everything we can to make our customers raving fans, meaning that they are just so overwhelmed with how we treated them that they just want to tell everyone about it. They just want to rave about it and go, hair on fire. Oh my gosh, this, their company was just incredible. You see what they did, and it ends up in the newspapers and whatever. And so, it's a really easy read. It's a real quick read. And I think that sometimes we gloss over some of those flavor of the month books out there. But I think there's some nuggets in Raving Fans and other books like that we could walk away with. I can't talk today. You silly wabbit. I think that I look back on my experiences. If I go into a hardware store, because I go into the man store, the toy store, Lowe's, and the hardware stores. I think about how I'm walking around looking for something, and I stop someone in an aisle and I say, I am looking for, and they say, there's a difference between, oh, let me take you there and show you where it is, or I think it's on aisle 4. I don't know. Go down to aisle 4 or whatever. I'm going on break. And so now I'm thinking, well, gosh, is my 50-cent purchase? I know it's not much. Is it not, worth future business? And I've had organizations where I had a problem and I went to them and I was about ready to spend thousands and thousands of dollars with them, and I was trying to get a $100 problem fixed, and they were more worried about not refunding or dealing with a $100 problem than keeping me as a happy customer, where I'd spent thousands of dollars before and I was going to spend thousands of dollars in the future. And they were more worried about dealing with a $100 problem. And I left them. I said, I'm going to go find another customer. So what ended up happening was I went to a company that had a slightly inferior product, but their customer service was so amazing that I looked past that inferior issue. So I think that, how I feel as a customer really matters. But I also think that symbiotic, how we treat the employee, obviously that company that treated me really well instilled and poured into their employees this need that we need raving fans. I think that there was a drugstore, a Walgreens or something, they used to have on their name tag, I am obsessed with excellent customer service, is what it used to say on their name tag. I think it's that message of, okay, well, if you're obsessed, why do you just treat me like, nothing? Help me out here. So I think it's a symbiotic deal. I think there's trust, not just from the employee side, but the customer side. I think that it's an issue that we need to create internally raving fans, but then that also creates external raving fans.
I think that's fantastic. I think we've really covered a pretty good topic here. And I think that it really does matter how we treat each other, whether it's from the aspect of the internal customer or the leader, the manager over that internal customer. And then also it matters how the customer responds to us. So it's like Dr. Foster said, it's symbiotic. It's definitely something that's a cycle, because one connects to the next. So then we must ask the question of, does the size of the company or the business, how does that relate to whether we're looking at the internal customer or the external customer first? Because I really do believe that the size of the company does dictate which comes first. And it also matters to whether it is a private company or public, i.e. government. And Philip, you and I have had some issues over the past couple of months dealing with government agencies just in basic customer service.
Yep.
And I'm just going to put a pin in and say, I hate automated systems. I want to talk to a real person.
Amen.
It doesn't always work. It's always something. But
this is really funny. Let me just say, I've had one issue with the federal government. They said I was dead, and I really wasn't. And all I was talking to was a machine. I couldn't get a person to tell them that I wasn't dead.
Right.
So,
you look really good for dead, girl.
Right. So, and that really speaks, it speaks to what we're talking about concerning the size of the organization and their response to their customers. So does the size of the business really influence which group of the people come first? And I really believe that it does, but it has to do with how that business choose to respond to the customer. Because I believe the larger the business is, the customer, the external customer comes first. Sometimes, but they treat it like it's more about the internal customer. For example, let's take a government agency. I will not name names. You can call it all you want. You're going to get an automated system before you get a live person. The intent of automated systems in the beginning was to kind of help filter to get you to the right person. The problem is you don't always get to the right person. You get hung up on the automated system, or when you get to the right person, they're fumbling around and they hang up on you. Then you have to start the process all over. So now it's about being more efficient internally and caring more about your internal customer, your staff, and less about, you're trying to streamline things for the external customer, but it's not helping the external customer. It's more about the internal customer. So it's kind of a two-edged sword and conundrum, whereas a smaller business, it may be more about the external customer, or it may be more symbiotic. So how does the size of the organization really affect or decide which of the two comes first?
Well, I think that's a shifting issue in my mind. I think that regardless of how we feel about it, I do think that organizations are flattening. They're becoming more agile, and in many cases, they're hemorrhaging employees to become more agile. And so I think that we're going to see a big change in that. Now, in the short run, I think that it's going to cause a lot of problems with customer service, because what we're heading toward is a generalist population. Someone who's working at a customer service call center, whether they're in a physical location or they're working from home doing that, which that's starting to happen. I think you're going to find those individuals becoming more cross-trained and more generalist in their approaches. They're going to have a wider range of ways to answer. Now, when we deal with the federal government, that's a whole other bellywick, if you want to call it that. They're their own worst enemy, and I don't see that changing for a long time, although it needs to, probably quicker than Fortune 50 companies.
Right.
But I do think that as we as leaders need to recognize the need to fill in the skills gap as quickly as possible. This is really a leadership strategic foresight thought process here. They really need to realize that the future is changing quickly before them, and every time they make a decision, the skills gap widens more and more. And so I think we, in the leadership field and in the education field, we've been in, and most of us have been in, and from being an educator, I think we need to find ways to instill in these students, especially, that they need to find ways to fill those gaps even for themselves, because they need to be more marketable into the future.
Dr. Boser, what are your thoughts on the size of the organization, and what dictates who comes first?
I think the size does matter. Just to take your example, the federal government, I think they might need to focus more on their customer service first, only because they are so large. And I think that they have limited positive customer service because they try to get so much information through the automated system. And then when you get to the person, you still have to repeat the same information. So they're duplicating work and processes for themselves. And even when you go through the automated system, 6 out of 10 times, you still end up with the wrong person.
Right.
And so I think they need a little bit of restructuring there. They're such a big organization. They're going to need some type of more up-to-date automated system, because what they have now is not functioning. It's basically just a spinning cycle. Just, give me your information. And then when I talk to someone, they're going to want my information again. Right. And so I don't think it's very productive, but I do think the size that matters. For an example, you gave, if you're an owner of your own business, you're a 1 or 2 person show. then you can dedicate the time probably to spend more on customer service than internal, which you still need to focus on. But most of your time will be dedicated to your customers because you're such a small organization. Solutions won't be that hard to figure out. Whereas if you are an employer and you have a organization with 600 people, that's 600 different personalities, 600 different problems, probably times 5. Everybody always has at least 5 issues at work. Right. And no automated system is going to be able to handle that. Okay. Right. And so I just think it depends on the culture, the organization, how many people you have. And organizations don't need to fear if they come up with the wrong solution. Okay, the federal government, we made this automated system, but it's really not helping us. What's some other solutions? And that's where I think Dr. Foster hit it on the nail is we need to do more strategic foresight and planning and have scenarios of different situations and be prepared for that. And one example the federal government could do better at that is during tax time, because they know there's going to be lots of issues and concerns, and the systems that they have in place right now aren't very effective or productive, and that ineffectiveness and less productiveness also affects their employees. Right. And so they need to listen to their employees and hear the concerns, and they need to listen to their customers and hear the concerns, because I'm sure their employees are getting tired of being hung up on, cussed at, and not being able to give proper solutions or details. So I think that whole system, that whole organization really needs a good consultant to come in and give them some solutions, because it's going to take more than one solution to fix those issues.
It may require a bulldozer just come in and swipe it away and start over.
Yeah.
I think we touched on something very, very important, and I really would like to chase this rabbit just for a quick moment, and that is customer service. We tend to focus customer service on the external customer, and which we should. But what kind of customer service training are we offering as businesses, government agencies, everyone, public and private, to our internal customer, i.e. this? Mm-hmm. A lot of times people come on board and they might get that initial training, but there's no ongoing or continuing training when it comes to customer service. And customer service is beyond just general feelings of making the person feel empathetic and, that you empathize with them and different things. But we need training on how to handle difficult customers. I know that was one training that I always had informally with my team when I was in the thick of business, just one-on-one, is how do you handle angry customers or difficult customers who just, go all out? Because you have to know as an internal customer, as an employee, how to control your own emotions when somebody is going all in, or how do you handle that? We live in the age of the internet, the information superhighway is what I call it. Now information is quicker at our fingertips. It's at the stroke of a key. It's in the blink of an eye. You can learn anything. You go on Google, and Google, you can start typing a few letters, and they're going to give you recommendations of what you're looking for, and boom, it's right there. And so now the customer is giving you the business while they look it up to see if you're telling the truth or what you're doing. And people know, they know all the form responses. They know all the generic responses. They know all of that. So how do we push past that? Or even to share those same responses, but in a tone and in a manner that comes across to the external customer as if you really do care and have a concern about whatever their needs are. Dr. Volzer, you brought this up about, the processes that businesses have in place. I believe that their intent is good, but it doesn't always work out for them. Here's the other thing is, a lot of times we will buy a box kit of something, but a cookie cutter approach doesn't fit everybody. There's no one size fits all model. And so I know one agency I work with an organization to where they bought a hotel system off the shelf when they really needed a customized product. Why? Because there were security protocols and certain things that needed to be in place that didn't fit the off the shelf model. And so a lot of times I believe we'll see as businesses, we'll see, oh, this is working for them, I want to buy that same system, or this is working for them, I want to try that too. But we don't dig a little bit deeper to find out what's going to be the best solution for us. And yes, it's trial and error. You're going to tweak in the beginning, particularly if you're a business owner and you're new. But because there are some tried and true things. But where do we come in and provide that type of training, or provide that know-how, that provide that, or look for a consultant, or look for someone who's going to help us kind of hone our customer service skills, both for the internal customer and the external customer, so that there is a win-win for everybody. And that, I believe, is the conundrum. I believe that is a challenge that many of us really kind of need to rise to the occasion. So what are your thoughts on, before we hit our last question for the day, what are your thoughts on that, on how we attack this issue of providing quality customer service training, not just for the internal customer, but how do we educate the external customer as well?
So I think that part of that education of the external customer is how we tell our story. What is the company story? And part of the story is, how do we treat our customers? Now, I have been a student of companies that seem to do some of these things really well, because I want to know what is the psychology behind it, what is the modus operandus, if you will. And one of the companies that I've been studying for a while is Zappos. And Zappos has a book that they do every year called their Culture Book. This is part of the story of Zappos. Now, what's interesting is this is a very nice book, and I have a hardbound book from, this is 2014, and then I have a hardbound book from 2012, 2013, and for some reason I never got the 2015. But anyhow, my point is this: these are really nice tabletop or whatever books. They're fully color and illustrated. If you contact Zappos and say, I'm interested in your culture book, they send it to you free. This is like probably a $50 book here if I were to order it. They send it to me free. Now here's why I'm even saying that. Zappos, from the very beginning, tells their people that they hire for customer service, we will pay you, I think it's like $2,000, $3,000. We will pay you money to quit. Day one, they just signed their paperwork. We'll pay you to quit. Do you know that the majority of people that sign up to go to work for Zappos don't take that buyout offer on the first day? Because the story is already there. The mindset, the mythology, if you will, is already there, that Zappos is the place to work. Now, one step further in this, if you know anything about Zappos, there are stories after stories that come out about customers that have called them. And actually, you read these in these culture books where customers call and they say, I'm interested in this product. Tell me about it. And the customer service person is on Google looking it up to say, you know what? You could buy that product better through Amazon or through JCPenney or whatever the company is. You can buy that for cheaper. And most of the time, the people will buy it from Zappos just because they were honest with them. So I think this is the key word here is this word culture. What is our story and what is our culture? And how does that not just permeate through the organization, but bleed out into the clients that are coming to us? How do we infect them with our good culture, if you want to use that terminology?
Good.
These are awesome.
I also believe too, Zappos knows their culture, but they also know their definition of customer service.
That's right.
So in the 21st century, we want to bring the definition of customer service to make the customer feel happy and give them what they want. But that's really not customer service. And so the organizations need to know what customer service is, what it entails, and how do we get there. And then that brings us back to Zappos. They knew their culture. They had a story. Therefore, they knew what customer service was. And it wasn't just about making the customer's dreams come true and giving them everything they want. Because in customer service, you can say no and still have a happy customer.
Yep.
So I think organizations need to, need to know the definition of customer service, um, and then know their story,
Mhm.
and then get their staff in the mindset of their definition of culture, customer service that fits that organization in that target market. Because
Hmm.
customer service for different target markets are going to be different. And so you can't come up with solutions to problems if you don't know your culture or the definition of customer service and how that's going to be intertwined into your organization. I
Hmm.
believe that we have to start from there as well. And Zappos has done a great job at that. I teach all my business students. We always look at the Zappos model. Um, and Chobani actually has a great
Hmm.
definition of customer service. And so I think it begins from there, and then we can take a step in the right direction. But it begins with changing the mindset and knowing the definition. And in the 21st century, organizations today don't know the real definition of customer service. And that's where the problem lies, because you can't come up with a solution if you don't know the real problem.
I think
So,
I think both of you hit the nail right on the head. It boils down to understanding your story, number one, but also how you define customer service. I don't believe there's a one size fits all definition of customer service because it depends on your business. It
That's right.
depends on what you value as a business. So for me, how I define customer service will often be rooted in my company's core values. This is how I look at it. When I look at a company, whether it's I want to buy something from them, or I'm interested in something, or I want to learn something about them, the first thing I go to is their core values, because that's going to tell me how they treat their customer, or how they would potentially treat me as a customer, or even as a business partner. So I believe that one of the things we need to do, as companies, as businesses, as leaders, is really define our core values, because that will tell us, and that will also communicate to our customers, both internal and external, what our customer service is going to be like, at what level. Because for me, if integrity, honestly, like for me, my core values are honesty, excellence, integrity, relationship, and service. That's my core values. That can tell you so much about my business bringing to the table, or what my expectations are. That communicates strongly. The same thing to my internal customers as well as external customers. When you see those core values of the company, you're already automatically, as an internal customer, as a staff member, going to know what we value as a company and what we need to be displaying to our external customer. Because if we're displaying these core values, then our message of customer service is going to be communicated, and is going to be felt. It's going to resonate throughout
Yep.
the community, our internal community as a business, and our external community as our customers, and people who engage with us on a regular basis. That to me says so much. So, and I believe your core values as a customer speaks to your story. That's part of your story. And so if we trace even the Zappos of the world, the Googles and the Amazons and all of these different companies, the Chobanis of the world, when we look at their story, I guarantee you we'll be able to see what those core values are, and we'll be able to trace that. You know what? What they're putting out aligns with what they say their core values are, or it's not too far off. I guarantee you. And that's what makes companies stick around longer. That's why a lot of companies have the longevity that they do, because they're sticking to the fundamentals of their core values, which resonates throughout the organization and beyond. And that's where we see the service level. And I think that some companies get too far, they get so big that they lose sight of those core values. And so I think that one of the things that needs to constantly happen is those core values need to be communicated on a regular basis, if not daily. I don't care if it's on a screensaver at work, and nobody gets to change their saver. This is what you're going to see when you log onto the computer, or whatever it is, to make sure that everybody understands that this is who we are. Our core values are who we are, and that's how we communicate that to others. So I think that that's important, when it comes to understanding this whole issue of customers, and who comes first, the staff or the external customer. um, so let me ask this question. Dr. Foster, you brought this up earlier about virtual offices and people who are working from home, particularly, I can't remember what industry you mentioned, but just companies that have virtual staff, how does this dynamic really influence which group of people should come first, the internal or external? I do believe the officeless economy, I think that was our very first blab, does have a huge impact on the level of service that's being provided today. It's going to continue to increase as we enter into more global, into a global marketplace where we're interacting one with another, again, due to technology and the internet. So, how does the dynamic of a virtual staff influence whether the staff comes first or the customer, the external customer?
Well, I think this is a good question, and it's certainly going to be a bigger and bigger issue as time moves along. I would say that from a psychological standpoint, there is no difference between a physiological staff and a virtual staff. And what I mean by that is we have to treat our employees the same way, regardless of where they sit to work.
Right.
They could sit in a coffee house, their office, at a central location, or an office in their house. It doesn't matter. We have to treat them the same. However, I do think that as we move to a virtual setting, we become more purposeful in our interaction with our dispersed staff, because we don't want to fall in that trap of out of sight, out of mind. We have to be more mindful and purposeful in connecting with those individuals on a regular basis. Beyond that, I think that the philosophies and rules of engagement and everything else that we've talked about today are still in play. We're just having to be more in tune with them and more purposeful in trying to make those things happen because of the dispersion of the workforce. That could be argued as I'm trying to say that we treat the internal employees as internal customers more importantly than the external. I'm not trying to argue that nuance. I'm simply saying we need to be more mindful of the dispersion and how we communicate. I think it's the same. It's the same side. It's a different side of the same coin, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Awesome. Dr. Bolzer, what are your thoughts on the virtual staff, the virtual office, and its impact on whether the staff comes first or the customer?
Working at an organization where we do have a virtual staff, you need both. I don't think one before the other. You really need both, because if your staff that's virtual is not getting the resources and help they need, that's totally going to affect the way they deal with the customers. Same for the customers who are dealing with services and products online, for instance, online education. Mm-hmm. And so there, you really can't choose one. You have to do both, which is tough. It's tough. And so I think organizations are still trying to figure that out. Either the staff's treated really well virtually and the customers are treated poorly, or the customers get everything and the staff is being overlooked. So in the 21st century today, I think we're in a dilemma where we really need to come up with some innovative ways, which brings me back to Dr. Foster's strategy on foresight, to boost customer service for internal employees and our outside customers. And how do we do that? I don't think anyone has really tackled that issue as of yet.
I think in listening to both of your responses, the word that I just wrote down is communication.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think a big part of this conversation has to do with how do we communicate to both our internal and our external customer concerning the level of service that we provide, as well as understanding both sides of the coin. I believe we've all had experiences where it's always been about the external customer, and as employees, we get overlooked, we're overworked. It's like the inmates run the asylum. So it's like if they get all they want and we get dumped on and we're supposed to just take it, and sometimes we feel like we don't have any recourse. Versus, sometimes the customer feels like, well, I'm always right and da-da-da-da, when like Dr. Foster said, they're never wrong, but they need the perception that they are right. Even when they're wrong. And when they're caught in being wrong, there's a way to communicate it, to smooth it over to where they understand that there are boundaries, there are rules. Case in point, there's a lot of issues surrounding the ADA with service animals. We understand that service animals, for instance, are covered under the ADA. However, emotional support animals are not. There
Hmm.
is a difference between the two. So, how do we communicate that to both those who are using emotional support animals and employees who are encountering those who are using emotional support animals versus those who actually have an ADA service dog? Then there are people who are abusing the ADA, going online, purchasing the little harnesses that you can put on a dog that says it's a service dog. There's no law against that. And
That's
so
right.
they're abusing the law. One woman stated in an article that she buys it for her little dog because she can't bring it to herself to leave her dog at home. So she does it because she doesn't have to pay extra because it's $150 for her to extra for her dog. But if it's a service dog, you cannot under the ADA charge extra for that dog. The dog also has different privileges. It can be on the flight, but it has to be in a in a kennel and all this other kind of stuff. And then she says, I feel actually bad because I'm doing something that's wrong for people
She should.
who really need a service dog, but I'm doing it to save money because I just love my dog so much and I can't help but leave it at home. Three different customers. These are three different customers, three different needs, one law. Emotional support animals at this point are not covered under the ADA, but are they a need? Yes, but they're not covered under the ADA, whereas service dogs are. Service dogs are trained to behave in a specific manner. There's certain things that they know how to behave around a wheelchair and certain things because they're trained to be a service for that particular person. Versus whereas you emotional support animals are don't have that same level of training. It's a different situation. I'm not saying that they're not needed. I'm not touching on that. I'm touching on the fact that we have three different customers here. One who needs the service animal, which is covered under the ADA, one who has an emotional support animal and they need it, but it's not covered under the ADA, and one who is abusing the ADA, and there's so many like it, by buying a harness, putting it on her dog who is not trained, who has an attitude, snapping at people, but she's lying, using the ADA as a means to save money just so she can travel with her dog. And she's not the only person. There's a lot of people doing that. I say all of that to say that as a business, how do we train our staff? First, there's ways we need to provide training to people to be able to understand how to recognize a service dog. There's training available out there. There are people who that's what they specialize in and teaching that. And the other thing is just trying to work through those things. And why do we have these different laws and why do we have these different things in place? When it comes to virtual staff, they don't have to encounter that. They don't really have to deal with that the same way as people who are face to face encountering it on a regular basis. Here's
Yeah.
another conundrum. As a customer, from customer to customer, how do we communicate from one customer to the next customer why this dog is allowed in the hotel and this dog is not? Because customers don't think ADA. They think you got a dog, I should be able to have my dog, or I should be able to bring my cat. I should be able to bring my trained monkey. I should be able to bring this. Versus, so it's a lot of times people don't understand the dynamics between the two. So I believe it's all in how we communicate the message on customer service. There are boundaries, there are lines, but how it's communicated, particularly in a virtual world, because people don't get to, in a virtual world, people can read into what you put based off of their perception of who you are. And so your intended message goes one way and they receive it a totally different way. So a lot of times that it gets skewed. And so I believe, just like you all are saying, we need to kind of look to the future ahead to see how we can better communicate our messages, particularly those in the virtual world, to other people so that we're not offending. Because now we've got to understand how can we communicate to people in other cultures so that we're not
Hmm.
offensive to them based off of what we're saying, because we may believe we're being direct, but we might offend someone by being too direct, or we may be too soft and we're offending them by we're being too soft. So like I have to catch myself because I like to say sugar, honey, love, and hey love, how are you doing today? People who know me understand that, but other people who don't understand it is, why she calling me love? It can be very offensive. So when you don't know a person's personality, particularly online, because that's what we don't know, all we have is words on a screen. How do we communicate that message? And I believe that that's something that we probably need a team of foresight specialists, Dr. Fox, to get your team together and see how we can tackle this, to be able to bring some real solutions to the table, because I believe it's needed. We're going to see more of this, and I believe people who are in public service, whether you are a politician, whether you are a city, a city manager, or whatever the case may be, you're in public service. I believe this is something that we need to tackle as well, because you know we saw last week how all hockey sticks broke loose when Brexit voted to leave the EU, and now we don't understand how that's going to impact this, and this, and there's all kinds of communication going on, and people are pointing the finger, and people are doing this, but nobody saw it coming. So if nobody saw it coming, where were the futurists to help people be ahead of what was about to happen, so that they can have the ability to respond? So these are some things that we need to do.
Yeah. So this futurist tweeted out a few days before the Brexit, and I said, no matter what happens, the England will not implode.
Right.
Britain will not implode. So, I do think that there's some big issues there. And I think you raise a lot of issues that make this an ongoing conversation well into the future.
Right. So do either of you have any parting words? We're at our 10 o'clock point. I see we've got some comers that have come to the conversation. Hello. And we've pretty dug into this topic, up to this point, but I want to give my colleagues an opportunity to share some parting points or some thoughts that they have on this issue of customers or staff. Who comes first? So I'll let Dr. Bolzer. She's been kind of quiet today. I'll let her go.
I've just been listening.
I'm gonna throw her out there today.
I'm gonna send her a cup of coffee.
Right.
I need some coffee. Well, just a few parting words. We could talk about customers or staff who comes first forever.
Right.
Amen.
But in the 21st century, I believe that we're so technology driven that we've taken just relationship building out of customer service in our staff. And that's something that we need to implement back, so there's not a coldness there in relationships, because computers and automated systems can only do so much. And once you take the personal responsibility out of getting to know a person in their life, it makes it harder to do business, actually. So word of advice for organizations: technology is great, but it's not a replacement for human connection and trust. And that's what customers really deep down, we're all longing for, that human connection and trust. And an automated system and technology can only give you so much connection. It's limited, no matter how great and how technology is improving drastically. It's never going to replace a human being. So just keep that in mind when you're dealing with customers, and you're dealing with your employees. And when you're dealing with anybody, for that matter, is to build on that human connection. That's what's going to grow the business. Human connection is the foundation of a business.
I agree. Dr. Foster?
So I think that the danger of the future is that we're going to see organizations move toward use of more technology, particularly as we see the argument of, robots, artificial intelligence moving into the discussion scape. And so I think that we as organizational leaders have to understand what that means to the end customer. Are we going to drive our customers away only because we were trying to be efficient or cheap or whatever it is, because we're trying to avoid the the Affordable Care Act or whatever benefits we're trying to avoid because of that? I think we're going to see organizations move toward technology in that way, artificial intelligence. And I think that's a discussion that probably needs to happen actively as well. But I agree with you, Dr. Bolzer, that we need to be more focused on training, helping our employees understand nuances, understand communication, as Dr. Hughes was bringing up, cultural gaps. How do we deal with those? I think that this is where the skills gap discussion comes in even more from what I had mentioned earlier. So I think we have a lot of work to do, a lot of discussion to do, a lot of figuring out to do. And this is certainly not answered today. I think it's something that needs to be dealt with.
I think you both made some very good points. I believe that at the end of the day, it does come down to human interaction. I believe that technology is a very good thing. It's done so much for us, but I believe the dangers of that is replacing human interaction. I believe that we live in a society, a global society, where people want everything fast. And that is the downside of it. We have so much technology who's with the intent of getting people what they want so fast at the blink of an eye. I want it fast, 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 fast. You know, we see those commercials. It's my money. I want it now. It's, you know, everything is about now and getting things um, quick. But sometimes quick is not always good. We can see that when it comes to the food supply, there's so much that we are trying to do to get the food supply to people a lot faster for the various numbers of reasons. And now we're seeing some reports, lots of reports of food recalls, product recalls, and this is happening and that is happening as a result of food supply. I mean, that's a different conversation, but I believe the intent is there, but sometimes innovation can do more harm than good. And I believe what you're saying, Dr. Foster, about artificial intelligence and people, human interaction being replaced with technology as companies try to nickel and dime and find ways around certain laws and regulations and benefits and different things is really a downside to humanity. And it's all it's going to do is increase the poverty level, which is more issues that we're trying to solve. We can't solve a problem by contributing to the delinquency of said problem. We've got to tackle this issue of greed, and maybe that's a topic that we may be able to dig into. If not, I know I'm probably going to talk about it. But you know, there's so many different reasons why businesses make the decisions that they make, of course. But at the end of the day, I firmly believe that when it comes to being in business, it's all about human interaction. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. I say that just about every time we talk. Um, and that's the truth. And if you think of it from the perspective of a customer, you aren't really kind of continuously getting, interacting or giving your business to anyone that you haven't established a relationship with. I know me, I don't like to beg people to take my money. So if you're not interested in me as a customer, meaning giving me your undivided attention, and most importantly, not treating me like I'm a criminal, then you got a customer for life. I'm very loyal. But the moment that changes, I'm looking for something else. And I believe sometimes employees take the same perspective. You treat me good, I'll treat you good. But the moment you take me for granted, the moment you take advantage of me, the moment I feel undervalued, unappreciated, it's time for me to make a change. And so we've got to learn how to take care of both our internal and our external customer, and we've got to figure out innovative ways to do that while at the same time being more efficient. So I believe this is a good conversation. We could continue it. We can have future conversations about it. We had a part two of diversity, so who knows? This may be a part two conversation, but I just believe that we'll never finish really getting into this topic. So I'll let my colleagues share some information about how you can connect with them online, and we'll close out for today. Dr. Foster.
Okay, so it's so good to be here. You can find out more about what I do at MaximumChange.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Maximum Change, and also my shameless plug. I have two books. One is called The Open Organization. Organization 3.0. I don't even know my own books. This is the evolution of leadership and organizational theories. This is a really good primer for any leader that wants to know what's going on theory-wise. And it moves us toward this next book called The Open Organization. This is in second edition. And both of them are available online at Amazon. But I'm also going to post a link for those who are here so that they can go to my go to my website, MaximumChange.com, go to resources, and you'll be able to get the links to those books there. So I'm happy to be here. So glad to be here. You can find me on YouTube under Maximum Change TV as well. Thanks.
Dr. Gozer.
All right. Well, I have a book called The Christian Millennial, Leading Generations in a Secular World. You can get that through Amazon or on Tate. I also have an author's website that I'll be posting shortly. working on another book and just doing a lot of consulting for a few companies, as well as trying to run a university. So pretty busy. And then doing blabs with these fantastic people of academia and good friends of mine, which is a blessing. So just excited to see what doors the Lord opens up and what we all can do, all four of us, including Dr. Clark, who's missing today, and how we can change organizations and leadership.
Right. Well, I'm Dr. Hughes. You can find my book, Pillars for Christian Mentoring, is actually on sale for its 1 year anniversary coming up this Thursday. I put it on sale for $19.95 on Amazon. You can inbox me. You can find me on Facebook, Dr. Latanya Hughes. I'm on Twitter, the same. You can find me, see my Twitter handle here. I'm on Instagram. You can just get in touch with me. I do have an author page. It's on the Create Space author page file. I also have a book, a poetry book. I've also posted a link there. I am working on a second book called Pillars for Public Servants, and then I have a whole entire series of books for pillars. But this pretty much is all on mentoring. This book I'm working on now is basically how public servants can also be mentors, but also look for mentors and what themselves, particularly when it comes to using mentoring as an interviewing tool, a technique for building a team of people to serve with them. And this is for those who are seeking a public office as a politician, or if you are a city, you work for the city or any type of public office, public, servants office. You know what I'm trying to say. I'm like Dr. Foster today. It's blah 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 blah. We can't get it out today. So I'm pretty excited about that book. I've gotten through a pretty big chunk of it yesterday, and I'm looking forward to having it come out within the next few months. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, does anybody else have anything to say? We're a little over time. We missed Dr. Clark on today, and hopefully he'll be back with us in 2 weeks for our next conversation. But stay tuned, stay connected with us, and we'll keep you posted on what we're doing. Thanks so much for tuning in today.
Thank
Awesome.
you.